So this idea of what are the changes? We love some kinds of changes. We hate other kinds of changes. Most humans tend to love changes they choose. The changes we struggle with are the ones we don't control. If we tend to enjoy or appreciate or see the changes we choose or feel like we have some say in, much more favorably than the changes that feel thrust upon us, what are the ways that organizations and leaders can design a greater sense of agency into what they do?
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Our guest today, April Rinne, is an expert in everything and anything having to do with change, chaos, and how to optimize, manage, and really perform at your best in this world of chaos and things that are going out of control. April Rinne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you. You know, it's ubiquitous. It's all over. It's saturated. Change, geopolitical change, economic change. Our neighborhoods are changing. Our schools are changing. The economy is changing. Industries are changing. Technology is changing. But I want to really start with one of the more important things that you can share with us about handstands. Help me understand you and your relationship to handstands and why you do them all over the world.
Sure. So we will get into all things change, uncertainty, world in flux, future in flux, you name it. In that spirit, I think I look at handstands as my favorite metaphor for seeing differently and changing your perspective. So we're going to talk about that stuff as well. Now, I'm not a professional acrobat these days, but I did grow up as a gymnast. So I learned to do handstands long ago. But then the kicker is I just never stopped doing them. When all of my friends that I grew up doing them, they just stopped doing them. And back in my 20s, I had some family friends challenge me to do handstands when I traveled, kind of a little bet of like, some people like they carry their teddy bear or they do props and they were like, oh, you can do better than that. They didn't realize how seriously I would take it. And so now I've been to well over 100 countries, done handstands everywhere from, the Colosseum of Rome, the pyramids of Giza, but also like on the border between North and South Korea. I have some fun handstand pictures.
Yeah.
And then as it relates to my work in change, this idea of seeing differently, changing your perspective, I think we'll circle back to that. So it really very much factors into my work.
I just love it, and one of my daughters is really literally in these last few weeks is really into discovering her handstand ability. And it's great in the hallways and where there's a lot more space outside. But in the house, she's becoming more agile and recovering her descent back to like normal. But there's some moments where some feet have gotten awful close to some artifacts in the house where it's kind of like, it's not really the best choice. But her enthusiasm
there. Being out, you don't want to do it on concrete, but you don't want to do it too close to like glass or china or anything like that. I will say, props to your daughter. As I get older, there are two big things that kind of come up. And again, literally, metaphorically, but this whole idea of alignment and what it means to be in alignment and know how to align, like physically, of course, but also like alignment in our lives. The sooner you can learn that and the younger you can learn that, the better. And the other piece that I learned much later in life is that handstands, or I should say any kind of inversion, so handstand, touching your toes, anything that reverses the flow of blood to your head, that gets you to tip upside down, is directly scientifically linked with greater mental acuity, greater longevity, and even happiness. So it turns out that doing handstands is pretty much a good thing across the board. So my little shout out there.
You are the proof in the pudding, April Rinne. I think that for our listeners, thanks for coming back. Our subscribers, we appreciate you being with us. Like us, love us, comment. We're going to put all of April Rinne's information, her book, her speaking profile in the show notes. April, let's light this candle here and get into your work. It's not enough to say change is everywhere, change is constant. And even conceptually, as an academic exercise, well, in change or in a breakdown, there's a breakthrough, or one door closes, another one opens, or there's opportunity and uncertainty and all this stuff. And, when people are in the middle of like a real crisis, chaos, a swirl, a storm, personal, professional, both, we're not like stopping everything and just going, hey, I'm in a swirl. There's an opportunity here. But how do we get there?
Yeah. Well, and that's the essence of a lot of my work. And I mean, you've packed like 10 questions in right there, which I love. And even just this idea of change being this one word or this one thing. Like, I hear from people pretty much every day. Some of them are like, I love change. Change is amazing. And other people are like, I hate change. It's horrible. It's hard. And it's like, it's both of those things and more. But like, what do we mean when we say change? And so a lot of my work unpacks the language of change, how we communicate it, how we think about it, how we show up for it, right? There's also the cultures of change. How are we taught to see
Yeah.
change? And a lot of it, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not taught in classrooms. What are the things we picked up from our family, our community, our environment? All of the things that shape how we see change and uncertainty and the unknown. But guess what? We don't typically talk about it. It's not on our resume. We do not know this about our colleagues. And yet, another way I like to phrase this is you have change at work, how people show up for a change at work, whether it's professional, career, organizational strategy, you name it. A lot of the ways that people show up to change at work aren't actually about work. They're about
Mm,
this broader cultural container, their expectations, their norms, all of that. And similarly, when change happens at work, a lot of that splashes out into things that are beyond work, right? They affect your family relationship. And so I'm looking at the nexus of all of this, and I'm looking at it very much from the perspective of business, leadership, teamwork, strategy, organizational change and transformation. But you can't do that well unless you really get into the more personal human, I mean, the human dimension of change is everything that I do. But really, you can't have the professional growth without the personal growth as well. And so
right.
I love that because there's a beautiful kind of toggling between.
Yeah. And the toggle is take that a little bit further because there's internal and external. There's natural growth. You're in primary school, elementary school, and you can move on and get advanced degrees. So there's growth and change that is a natural kind of pathway. And then there's externalities, whether it's a weather incident or, God forbid, a death in the family, which God forbid, but it does happen, or people move, or all sorts of external changes. And then reconciling it, we're taught in many ways consistency, predictability, irregularity, having habits. But the world isn't like that. There's constant change. There's constant inputs that are out of our control. So, take us further on that road.
Yeah, well, if I may, I'll just use my own story. And I want to come back to the habits and the practices that you mentioned, because those are actually really important. A lot of people don't have them, but we have 100% control over whether and how we gain them. So I want to come back to that because that's also core to my work. But just my own instance, and you referenced it, and I know this is tricky territory, but obviously it's key to what I do. That for me, so for many years, and this is speaking and advising and doing all these different things around change and uncertainty. And people would look at my resume and say, "Oh yeah, strategy." Like they could map out the credentials and so forth. But they were like, "But what really is it about this flux stuff? Like where does this really begin?" And I realized that while it's a story that I've always been very open to sharing and know it's been important to my life, it wasn't on my resume. Many people didn't know this about me. But when I go back and say, where does my interest in all of this begin? It's not the organizational transformation. It's not the business and the leadership. I mean, that's all important.
Yeah.
But for me, my entry into the world in flux happened long ago. I was 20. I was at university and I was overseas. So I was halfway around the world and I got the phone call that like no one expects to get, wants to get, thinks they're going to get. I was 20 years old and I got a phone call that both of my parents had died in a car crash. Both of them. Now, you can imagine like my world just flipped upside down. Everything about my world just, right? Family, sense of identity, sense of self, support system, my ideas about my career, the future, like it
Yeah.
all just melted. And so that is when my journey to Flux began. Now I've been walking this walk, talking this talk, practicing, researching, paying really close attention ever since. But I bring that up because that is what drives what I do. And that's the kind of quote unquote experience I bring to these conversations. Because
Yeah.
we can research in books and labs and all that, and that's important work to do. But when it comes down to it and kind of coming full circle, I still remember the first time I told that story on stage. I was quite afraid because I wasn't sure if people would take me as seriously.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if they would it challenge my credibility, da, da, da.
Well, what did you find? You found that
Oh,
people
I
did take you seriously.
that is probably you can look at my resume and the degrees and all that sort of stuff. My single greatest source of credibility is my own human lived experience. And so the thing that I was most hesitant about, actually, from that point forward, it like blew the doors off that people, and I do a lot of work with executives and leadership teams, and they're like, that's what we want to talk more about.
Yeah.
That's what we don't know about each
Yeah.
other. That's the missing piece of the puzzle. And so another tangent maybe we can come back to. A lot of my work these days also is like teams and organizations, we focus a lot on change management. Like, how do we manage this change? We've got our 6-point framework. We've got our checklist. Like, to your point, like change happens. We'll just put it through our process and somehow voila, it will be
Right.
managed,
It'll
gone.
come out the other side.
Is that how the world works, right? Like, really, is
Mm.
that how the world works? No. And especially the last 5 years or so, we've had a crash course in that. But the fact is, that's still where a lot of business related conversations begin or where they're rooted. Versus for me, it's this human dimension of change. It's not that change management doesn't matter, it's that it's totally incomplete, completely
Mm.
incomplete, I should say, for the world we're
Well,
in today.
what do you mean by that incomplete?
It's the human dimension. So you can give me a checklist of how I should process a given change. What you're not asking me, for example, this isn't the only thing, but a really big one is, are you seeing this given change, whatever it is? Are you seeing it from a place of hope or fear? Because depending on how you answer that question, it's going to have a very different effect on how you actually manage it, what you actually do. And yet, we don't ask that question. We're just like, here, 6 steps, go. But the fact is, a lot of people show up to a lot of different kinds of changes, particularly the ones they don't control, from a place of fear, anxiety, paralysis, whatever that is. That is a recipe for, at best, complications and at worst, a disaster when it comes to
So
change management.
when you work with people and you're able to distinguish that, and let's say, look, I mean, there's people can come from greed, they can come from fear, they can come from hope, and many other places. Before you move forward and manage or put some things in place, things, actions, practices, virtues, core values, do you get into it and say, let's look at this fear, or let's look at this origin here, because this is going to be the driver, this is going to be the fuel going forward, not to fix it, but to understand it and maybe see if there's the word opportunity here, as part of their origin story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You got to do this. And for me, a lot of it, none of my work is prescriptive in terms of like X is bad and Y. It's like, it's a
Right.
menu. It's a menu and different things work for different people. I have learned that over, 30 years of doing this work. We have to build the awareness. We don't even know this about each other. We can't have the conversations we need to have. We can't open those doors. So a lot of my work, it's about building that awareness. And depending on the setting, if it's a keynote, if it's a workshop, if it's a facilitation, you name it, there will be a lot of reflection for sure for individuals. And then oftentimes breaking people out into small groups, for example, so that they can just start having these conversations. And again, what's lovely, one of the things I so love about my work is that every single person on this planet has something to contribute. Everyone is good at certain
Yeah.
kinds of changes and struggles with others,
Yeah.
not always the same ones. So everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has something to learn. And so it just becomes, speaking of opportunity, it just becomes this like onion that you just keep getting to peel back, and people start realizing what they don't know about themselves, what they don't know about each other. And just that, I like to say we're actually humans are sitting on an enormous, enormous amount of wisdom when it comes to change and uncertainty, but a lot of it is buried. It's sort of behind the door. It's just not known, not talked about. And if we can start doing that, we've already gotten ourselves, partially down the way towards not just
Yeah.
solutions, but showing our
And
best.
we bury it ourselves, you know?
Well, and we do. There are all kinds of ways. Oh, we pretend, we deny, we reject, we resist.
Void.
Also, yes. Also, though, I will say technology also makes it really easy for us to do that now because guess what? We can just distract ourselves and avoid any of this.
Sure.
Or, yeah, we can do that. And also, more and more with all the apps on our devices and whatnot, it's like, there's a change. I don't like it. I'll just install an app to help me fix it. And it's like, you can't outsource the human dimension of change. I
That's
mean, yes,
beautiful.
you know,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
like,
that
this is
I
like,
just want to underscore that because like I'm some type of social scientist or psychology or psychiatrist, but look, I do have a lived experience as well. And, the human being, I've just noticed in my limited human experiences, we want to go fix, we want to like be in action, which is good, be in action, but it's almost like a band-aid or some kind of answer. And it's much more often deeper than that. And, I can relate, April, to your origin story on a really personal level. When I read it, my father passed away when I was 13, very suddenly, not as tragic as you, but it was less than a month, not even 2 weeks in the hospital, cancer, and passed away. And it was sudden. It was a real blow. And I can look back now at 58 and I can say that in the most positive sense created who I am today. And my best tools and my best go-to mindsets and beings that I don't even have to like consciously say, oh, let me access my mindset, is started there. And in the moment, it was tragic. I was crying. I was confused. I was lost. The world was taken from under my feet. I had no direction, just the North Star, no compass, no map, no anything. And today I can stand and say, my ability to be agile, to be flexible, to take change on is sourced from that. Here's
mm,
that I just wanted to share that with you because I
thank
can really
thank
identify. I
thank you,
you're
and I'm
well, thank
and
you.
I'm and I'm sorry, and it's interesting, just a brief interlude. I know
Yeah,
we lots to talk about.
please.
This is important. This is
Yeah,
really important because we all have stories to share. And when we can do that more, we are melting the ice that so many things feel frozen or stuck in these
yeah,
days.
yeah,
And so I'm really sorry. And I also find that it's not, I don't wish that had happened to you. I don't
yeah,
wish I had lost my parents. I don't wish a lot of things in this world. But guess what? That's what life is. And when we can see that things we don't want to have happen will happen, and how we harness those experiences as fuel for what
yeah,
comes next, as
yeah.
fuel to become, grow into who we are, and then also use that to share with others. That's the most powerful thing, the most impactful thing I think we can do as humans. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and I really do mean that. And I say, and I think I might have learned this from my father. You never know who you're sitting next to. You and I travel a lot. We're on planes. We're in airports. We're checking in. We're going through security. We're proximate to a lot of people. We're at events all the time. You never know. There's a whole mine of gold, of richness in the person next to you. They're either sharing or they're not because, they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with. I want to get your thoughts on something. You say some people love change, some people hate change, and both can be kind of an avoidance. I love change, and they're running from or avoiding the habit, the consistency, the regularity, the baseline fundamentals. And then others who are like grounded in that, pardon the pun, right?
Mhm.
But are resistant and spend a lot of energy, avoiding the change, the transformation, what do you say to that? You must
Yeah.
see that in your work,
Oh, well, all the time. And so much of my work at a very basic level, again, that the kind of foundation is helping people unpack this very thorny, ornery word, change, which means so much more than one thing. So, this idea of what are the changes? We love some kinds of changes, we hate other kinds of changes. And again, research and observation, what are the patterns? So much of what I do is like pattern finding. So,
Mhm.
what are the patterns that tend to exist across cultures, across demographics, so on and so forth? And because that can be helpful of just like building the awareness. Because if you love it and I hate it, is it the same thing? Or do we just have totally different perspectives on it? Or how can we better understand each other? And then how can we carry that into the world? And so a very, blunt filter, but it's super powerful and super simple to wrap your head around, is that in general, most humans tend to love changes they choose. So a change that I'm opting into, right? That's when you hear about people saying, I'm an agent of change. I'm a catalyst for change. They're choosing it. They're opting in. They want this to happen, right? The changes we struggle with are the ones we don't control, right? It's the one that blindsides you on a Tuesday afternoon. It goes against your wishes. You didn't see it coming. You don't want, right? Super simple, but super powerful when you think about it. And I often will have people write down before I've shared this, context with them. I'm like, take a sheet of paper, put a line down the middle. On the left, write down all the changes, big, small, personal, professional, you name it. Just write down all the changes you've loved recently. On the right, all the changes you've hated, just every single one. Like no right or wrong, just write them down. And then I say, try this on. Are the ones on the left the ones that you felt like you had some control, some say
Mm.
over? And what's fascinating, and the ones on the right, and 100% of the time, like it's not like a perfect fit, but there is just this alignment. And here's one of my favorite nuances to help people remember. It's not that the changes you choose always work out, right? My favorite example, like that haircut, maybe not you, but that haircut you got a few years ago, right? Like you picked it, wasn't the best haircut, but like you picked it. Or that sports team you love, right? They don't seem to ever be able to win, but you love them and you pick them and you're like an
Right.
avid fan. These are changes you pick. They don't always work out, but we feel differently about them because we had some say in being part of them, some say in creating them, so on and so forth. So just like that one thing, usually people are like, it's not rocket science. It's not like, oh, I've never thought that way. But when you put it in that stark a contrast and say, start there, people are like, wow, that explains a lot, even in team-based settings. Some people might have seen a change coming, others not, others really being, I see this in workplaces a lot, people who are really, they want to change, but they feel stuck.
Yeah.
And then something happens in the organization. There's a reorg or something. And like, oh my gosh, no, and like some of them love it because they know they were looking forward to that. And here's the change. And others are like, I hate it. And just a fun anecdote. This was a good friend of mine a couple of years ago who was quite unsatisfied in his job at the time and had sort of planned his exit strategy, right? He was going to bid adieu, had all of that happening. And I don't know, it was like, let's just say he had a 6-month plan for that to happen, right? 3 months in, there's a reorg and he's let go.
Mm.
He is devastated.
Wow.
And we sat there and I just want to call this out. I said, listen, this is exactly what you planned on doing. The only difference is you didn't choose the exact date. And he was like, what? And then he was like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
So that one example illustrates like the whole spectrum of those dynamics pretty clearly.
Yeah. Right. And sometimes people phrase it like, for a reason it happened, like for some reason it happened,
Right.
and it's because it's outside of what they chose. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
they have a way to frame it or to take some level of ownership, where it can be understood.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you're I don't know if we probably don't go into detail all kinds of detail on this. But the thing is, what I want, it just takes more time, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I will often go into is at some point in, a talk, a workshop, whatever it is, you get into, so what does this mean about how we design our organizations, products and services, org charts, you name it. And this is a really interesting point. So if we tend to enjoy or appreciate or see the changes we choose or feel like we have some say in much more favorably than the changes that feel thrust upon us, what are the ways that organizations and leaders can design a
Hmm.
greater sense of agency into what they do? And what's fascinating, we see this all the time. And we know there's going to be organizational change. We know that we need to undergo some process of transformation, whatever it may be. But there's one way of doing that, which is like, listen, we're going to communicate to you what's happening, but like it's happening. And
That's
that's
right.
versus there's going to be a change and we're going to make it more collaborative, more co-created. We're going to involve you in this process. And it doesn't mean that everyone gets everything they want at all. It just means there's an invitation to be part of shaping that change, being part of that process. And what you find is that it's a simple thing to do, but when you signal and design in some of that agency, not only are you more likely to get more people to go along and feel better about it, but you reduce a lot of the friction that can often come up en route.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is, and I think, I'm going to take, you went into the micro, I'm going to take a way out, including people, including your team, up, down. I mean, participating,
Yeah.
being part of it, agency, use the word, collaboration, call it what you want, but that, hey, look, certain things have to be decided by certain people or chosen. Either, it's a public company and there's a board, or it's a medium-sized business and there's two co-owners or whatever. But many things can be included or decided together, or made a choice made together, right? Or some type of participation. And that's important. I want to shift gears a little bit in a world that's constantly pushes for more.
Yeah.
And, meeting planners, who I just want to give a shout out. These are a lot of our audience, our listeners. You deal with them all the time. I deal with them every day, who are people who live in a flux mindset, consciously or unconsciously. They're adaptive. They move with alacrity, agility, and really are, I call them 4x4 vehicles. They can deal with all types of terrain.
Mm.
The phrase, know you're enough, tie that into this world that's constantly pushing for more, how we can embrace that mindset. A little
Yeah.
bit of a
So,
hard left turn from where we were, but
no,
I
that's
know I know it's important to you.
absolutely. And let me just connect a couple dots. So we haven't really talked a ton about the essence of this work. You mentioned mindset, but this concept of the flux mindset. So we've been
Please connect the
talking around,
dots,
well, we've
because
been talking around it a little bit.
yeah.
And at the essence, so I mentioned change management. For me, it's not just the change management, it's your mindset. It's your change mindset, which I call your flux mindset. And so we can go into that, but I'll kind of leave that because it's really at the core. And it is this ability to see all change as opportunity. It goes deeper than that, but that's the essence. And then so you've got this first step of, to thrive in a world in flux, you want to be able to open a flux mindset. And that's really acknowledging that your relationship to change can improve. And then people are like, okay, I can get my head around this mindset, but then like, what do I do? Like, how do I put this into action? What are the practical, tangible, tactical kind of how-tos? And then I have these things called the 8 Flux Superpowers, which you can think of as practices, habits, skills, one of which is this idea of knowing you're enough. So people who know they're enough, and we'll get into riffing on the the, the language again, are better able to navigate change. So let's come back to just this idea of more, and that we live in a society today in which we are, if I can say, like, we are obsessed with more. And I don't just mean more money or more power. It's more clicks and more likes and more cars and more clothes and like more everything. And there is this almost inherent belief that more is automatically better. And I'm not saying that more is bad. at all. I'm just saying that this obsession with more is getting us into a lot of trouble. And for a lot of people, the younger you track, the more this is the case. But this notion that like more has to be better, there's a belief, a creeping belief, but pretty pervasive belief for many people that they will never have enough, do enough, earn enough, fundamentally be enough. And so you're like, where does this come from and how do we fix it? Now, I'm coming at all of this from the lens of change and uncertainty. And the fact is, the easiest way I can put it, when we are always after more, we will never have enough. And if you think about by design, it can't work because you're after more. What happens? You imagine you get more. Then what? You need more. Like have the more. And you just keep kicking that can down the road. And again, you can think about this on many different metrics, right? Physical possessions, but also just notoriety and who we are. When you are after more, you'll never find enough. But when you know you're enough, and we'll come back to this word enough, when you know you're enough, and that's both Y-O-U-R as well as you are enough.
Correct.
Like fundamentally,
Both
you are enough. Both, and that's intentional. I am riffing on the words intentionally. That you immediately begin to see abundance where before you saw scarcity. And you begin to see things you'd missed before. And for me, again, lens of change and uncertainty, when you know you're enough, you are almost by default better equipped to navigate change. You don't have the hang up between I'm defined only if I have more. And what you find is you're much more nimble, much more agile, much more able to pivot to new circumstances. So I'll pause there because I know some of that might sound a bit abstract.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think I would take the case that it also it provides a sense of peace, or that it provides access to peace, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, if you're in this paradigm of it's never enough or you're never enough, both spellings, all spellings, all plays on words intentionally, that you lack affinity, you lack love, you lack creativity, you lack energy, all those kind of things. And the inverse of that, if we can come back to a handstand, is say, hey, wait a minute, I'm just going to declare it and live from that point of departure that I am enough and I'm enough and live from that vitality, creativity, energy, connection, all those aspects of one's life expand, or at least you have the access to expanding it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of this know you're enough, it does, to your point, it revolves around, there's a sense of peace, there's a sense of balance, there's a sense of harmony. When you think about enough, it's not too much and it's not too little. It's enough. It's in harmony. It's really essentially that well-being. And what's fascinating, Seth, and I think you probably know this, but many people don't, this idea that, or this assumption I find out in society, people sort of assume it's always been this way, that like we've always been about more. The fact is, no. This obsession with more is a very recent phenomenon in history. And we can really trace it back, again, not to get too wonky, but the advent of consumer mass marketing and a consumer-based economy really did something to all of us that's not necessarily that helpful. But if you look historically, yes, there have always been people with more and with less. And, you had kings with a lot, you had paupers, you had inequality, for example. But for most of human history, the goal was not the pursuit of more. Goal was to have enough to care for yourself and your family. And anything that was more than enough was like excess baggage.
Yeah.
You didn't want it.
Yeah. It was a drag.
It was drag. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the metaphor of like a journey, and yes, you might want provisions for an emergency. That's always a good thing to have. But beyond that, it's just baggage. And so this idea, I ask people sometimes, and we'll do this again in like keynotes and stuff, where like what's in your bag, this metaphorical bag. And if you're taking a trip, yes, you want to make sure that you have enough underwear, you have a warm jacket, like you want enough. You don't want
I'll leave the shampoo and conditioner behind. That's me. Okay.
And then you start, you've brought up a really interesting point. When we're about enough, you start looking at sharing differently.
Hmm.
You start looking at sharing the load, sharing the weight, who
Yeah.
needs what. But this idea that you want enough, but anything more than enough when you're traveling is excess baggage. Who wants an extra piece of luggage? No one. No one wants to drag that along. But if you apply that to your journey of life, are you living within that enoughness, right? Because I think so much we've over indexed on the physical stuff, like we more everything, but we've often under indexed on the human stuff. So like
Yeah.
you have enough love in your life, enough
Yeah.
dignity, enough integrity, and you start recalibrating those things. And we find that's a really helpful exercise for many people.
I think that that's really beautifully put, April. We're coming to the end of the conversation, but for our meeting planners who travel a lot and can grab onto this,
Yeah.
and we have business owners and leaders in all sorts of organizations and families and neighborhoods and communities, that is the essence. Because is it the stuff, or is it really who you're being and being connected? And it sounds philosophical, esoterical, high-minded, but it really is the truth that in society, all of our signals are the consumerism and the acquisition of all this stuff. And April, it wouldn't be a podcast episode on the Keynote Curators if we didn't talk about summer camp. So I'm going to kind of round it out on this point. We're heading into the end of the school year, and our children are heading up to New England, to Maine, to summer camp. No electricity, not even the only disposable cameras, no phones, just your bunk and your activities. The place, when they light up and talk about, they love school. My kids love school. They love their activities, piano, tennis, art, all these things. But there is a different lighting up and a different spark when they talk about camp. Now, I'm not going to say that the source of it is because there's less stuff there, but it is a curiosity. There's no distraction. There's nothing else to do and nowhere to go but just be with your friends, and then go and to an activity, paddleboarding or playing softball or whatever. And it's about the being together that is the richness and the connection and the affinity and the love and all that comes with that, and not about the app, which is such a short-term, not even solution, just a short-term idea that doesn't last.
And if I may say,
Please.
the experience you're describing is triggering at least 3, but probably more like 5 of the 8 superpowers. And I'm thrilled because we're talking about another one of the superpowers is be all the more human, which is actually about our relationship to technology and the fact that it's the human relationships, not the technology, not the apps, that help us navigate change. There's another one called Getting Lost. And this one is about the role of travel, but the role of nature, and nature being one of the best teachers of change as well. And so your kids are getting out of their comfort zone. They're
Totally.
getting lost, not like they're never going to be found kind of thing, but they're getting to try new things and stretch beyond that comfort zone and realize that it's not only not as scary as they thought, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And they're having this analog experience.
Yeah.
And I like to say they're being fluxy,
Yeah.
if you will. So I love that. And I will also say, speaking of children and just, demographics in general, there's no age that's too young to learn this flux mindset, this fluxiness. There is still today more change and uncertainty ahead, not less. And I don't have an end date for when that dynamic shifts. I think there's
Right.
just more and more. And so for leaders today, for teams today, for adults today, but for young adults and for kids today, these are skills we're going to need every day from here on out. And so the sooner we can not just have these conversations, but have these experiences like summer camp, et cetera, the more fluxy, the more change ready, the more future ready we're going to be.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I have a fabulous time. I'm a little envious.
No, it's great. And I'll tell you, either it's summer camp in Maine or doing handstands on the 38th parallel, but all require a certain type of mindset to turn the world upside down, get your blood flowing in different directions to just expand our world. I think we're going to end on this point, April. I could literally go on for another hour or two. It's such a rich conversation. Thank you for the work you're doing, for everybody that you speak to and makes such a difference from the keynote stage, your research, your books. It's just truly a gift to have your story be shared and make such a difference.
Thank you so much. And I'm thoroughly enjoyed this as well. We'll have to do it again sometime.
We will. We will come back. And to our listeners, subscribers, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Super rich conversation. This is why you do come to the Keynote Curators Podcast, to learn, to grow, expand your mind, and share with others. So until then, we'll see you next time.